everyone, welcome back to my Lupus YouTube page. This video right now is part 2 of my lupus nephritis story. So I will say, if you haven't watched my first 2 videos yet, I would highly suggest to watch those videos first before continuing on with this video, just so you have a better understanding of my lupus background and so that you can get familiar with everything that happened in part 1 of my lupus nephritis story, which I started back in 2010 and ended in 2014 with my second kidney relapse and second kidney biopsy. So that is actually where I plan on continuing my story here in part 2 of my lupus nephritis video. So in the beginning of 2014 is when I approached my nephrologist and kind of expressed to him like, hey, my body is starting to swell up again. So that is when we did a 24-hour urine collection, and from those results is when he decided, hey, we need to do a second kidney biopsy. But what was difficult during that time was that my white blood count was actually really low, meaning I basically didn't have an immune system. I was really sick. So you are not allowed to move forward with a kidney biopsy when your white blood count is really low. Again, having basically no immune system during like any type of procedure is completely dangerous. So he suggested that I do these infusions with a corticoid steroid called Solomedrol. I did about two or three infusions before actually starting the kidney biopsy. And before starting the kidney biopsy, I actually also brought up to my nephrologist that I wanted to freeze my eggs before moving forward with anything. And I got this idea from my old roommate, Kim. Remember I mentioned in my lupus nephritis part 1 video that my college roommate, Kim, also had lupus. Well, she actually went through this period of time in college where she was having a difficult time breathing. So she actually did a lung biopsy, and her doctors actually offered for her to freeze her eggs before starting chemotherapy. But luckily, they didn't really find anything of any concern in her biopsy, so she ended up not moving forward with chemotherapy. But I just remember when she told me that they kind of offered to freeze her eggs, I just remember thinking like, my doctors never like offered me that. I would love to freeze my eggs before like putting my health through all of these medications and whatnot. So I brought that up to my nephrologist, but he really kind of sat me down and was like, hey, you really need to outweigh the costs and benefits here. Either you know, wait and do all of these things to freeze your eggs, because you know, freezing your eggs isn't that easy. You actually have to go through a whole process that actually takes up a lot of time, where you have to like do injections and actually do like the extraction, right? So doing all of that in that long period of time basically leaves my kidneys to kind of get worse. And so it was either do all of that and make my kidneys worse, or take care of my kidneys now, get healthy, and then kind of worry about, you know, having kids later on. And I just remember like thinking, you know, it's my last quarter at Davis. I'm trying to get healthy. I'm just trying to finish off school, get my degree. I need to get better, because, you know, after I was done at Davis, I was planning to finally move in with my husband, Kevin. And I don't know, there was just a lot going on during that time, and I felt like I needed to make the decision right away, and my health came first. So I decided to just move forward with the kidney biopsy. So again, after the 2 or 3 infusions that I had, my white blood count went up, and I was finally able to do my second kidney biopsy. So after my kidney biopsy, my results showed that I was class 4 and class 5 in lupus nephritis. So my nephrologist suggested that I do another round of Cytoxan, but he suggested that I do the infusion version instead. So I basically got one infusion done every month for 6 months, where I literally had to go to the hospital and sit there for about 3 to 5 hours and basically get this infusion done with everyone else who was undergoing chemotherapy. And I was always the youngest one in the infusion center. It was not fun at all, but I will say that for some reason with the infusion version of Cytoxan, I actually didn't experience any of like the chemotherapeutic side effects. Remember the physical side effects I mentioned in part 1, where like my hair fell out, my skin and nails turned gray. So the infusions didn't give me those side effects, but the oral version of Cytoxan did. I mean, I still got the moon face from like prednisone, and my body was still swelling up. So I did, you know, start Lasix again. And of course I continued on with my Plaquenil. So I don't remember if there was any other drugs other than that that I had taken, but that is basically the treatment that I got after my second kidney biopsy. And of course, after the Cytoxan infusions, I started back up with Cellcept. So something really important that I haven't mentioned yet is kind of finding that balance within having lupus. So again, lupus makes your immune system extremely overactive to the point where it can attack you internally, right? But then taking these different immunosuppressant drugs, especially depending on what kind, can either lower your immune system to just be generally really low or not have an immune system at all. So this makes you more susceptible to getting other illnesses. So like, I kid you not, since having lupus, I have been to the emergency room so many times. I've been to the doctor so many times. I've taken antibiotics so many times, just for like so many different reasons. So for example, I've had pneumonia twice. I have had an ear infection twice. I've had an eye infection. I've even got like an infected paper cut on my finger. I've had a staph infection. I've even had shingles. And you know, anytime that I get a cold, instead of recovering like 1 to 2 weeks like a normal person, I get sick for like an entire month. So it is so difficult, again, to just find that balance within having lupus and within having this illness, because another thing that's really difficult about it is there's so many different things that can trigger it, right? So for example, just like having a really low immune system and then being around someone else who's sick is really difficult, because basically within having lupus, other people can get us sick, but we can't get them sick. It's really weird to put it in that way, but say for example, if I were to be around someone who's sick, let's just throw out numbers there. So if I were to be around someone who's sick, I probably have like a 90% chance that I'll get sick too, in comparison to a normal healthy person who has more of like a 50% chance, right? So again, just finding that balance is just always so difficult. And it's always so difficult too, because another thing that can trigger it is different kind of stressors, such as like physical stress, emotional stress, can just kind of raise your chances again of just getting all these other like little, not even little, I don't even want to say little, but just any of these other illnesses. So you really just, if you have lupus, have to just really be careful with it, and again, just kind of find that balance. So another example that I kind of wanted to mention was that during that time of, you know, having my kidney biopsy, and again, it being the last quarter at Davis, my immune system was really low. Again, I mentioned I had a really low white blood count. So that was also winter time. So I basically tried really hard not to go to campus or go to class as much as possible, just because I was kind of nervous to get sick during that quarter. Again, I really wanted to finish off that quarter, still get good grades, and, you know, still get my degree, which I did. But within that 10-week time period of that quarter, I kid you not, I was only in school for like 3 weeks at most during that time, because I only went to campus or class if it was extremely necessary. But what was difficult during that time was my cousin Lauren actually got married that February. So the day of her wedding, it actually rained a lot, and I was a matron of honor, so I had a lot of responsibilities and just helping to ensure that, you know, my cousin wasn't stressed and that everything was flowing really well. I volunteered to hand make the corsages and boutonnieres, and I also volunteered to do her makeup that day. And my immune system was so low during that time, I wasn't able to eat fresh fruits or vegetables, or even be around like fresh plants. So if you could just imagine again how weddings work, I was holding a fresh bouquet of flowers that entire day. Of course, all of the food there was, you know, they served salad, blah, blah, all the snacks were fresh. And again, it was raining that day, winter. So, you know, a lot of people around me during that time were really sick. So being out that day made me really nervous, but luckily I was healthy enough to, you know, continue on with the wedding and actually enjoy the wedding. It was a beautiful wedding. My cousin did an amazing job putting everything together, and I'm so glad that God gave me the strength that day to really enjoy it with her. So yeah, so again, just to kind of give you an example of the difficult things, or the things that, you know, I kind of had to tiptoe around having lupus and being on chemotherapy, because it's not just like being sick myself, but how it affects my life and how it affects other people. I think is what a lot of people don't really understand. Like, don't really understand if they don't have lupus themselves, or a type of illness that they're trying to fight like on a daily basis. It is not just us internally, but our entire life. It affects our entire life. Again, our relationships with other people, our jobs, if we go to school, little to even like big things. And it's what a lot of people don't understand. Sometimes it's little things that may not seem like a big deal when it doesn't affect you, you know? Like, for example, on the days that my joints hurt, you know, like, you know, people are able to just wake up, brush their teeth, and get ready for work or get ready for their day. But sometimes, you know, when us lupus warriors wake up and having that joint pain, it's difficult to hold a toothbrush or even to squeeze a toothpaste bottle. So that's like things that, again, little things that you don't really think about, but affects us all the time. So continuing on with my story, I basically obtained my undergraduate degree from Davis in March of 2014. And as soon as I graduated, I basically moved in with my husband, Kevin. Again, I mentioned he lived in San Diego during that time. So I actually only lived in San Diego with him for about 4 months. And then my husband's ship got relocated to Hawaii. So we actually moved to Hawaii a couple months later. And it was kind of perfect timing because I finished off my 6 months of Cytoxan exactly. And then a couple weeks after that, we moved, and it was really exciting. We lived in Hawaii for about a year and a half, but my husband did get deployed during our time in Hawaii. So I just kept really busy during his deployment. I think he was gone for about like seven months or so. So I worked 3 jobs while he was away to keep myself busy, because when we moved to Hawaii, I was, feeling a lot better. I still struggled with the moon phase because I was on prednisone for such a long period of time. But, I found a job right away. I found a full-time job. I still worked for Mac on the weekends, and I even decided to babysit when I had time. So that's what I basically did while he was away. And then while he was away, I focused a lot on myself. Just trying to get my life together, get back to like feeling normal again, going to work. Living in Hawaii was like so much fun. So like I went hiking all the time, I went to the beach all the time, the food was amazing. And even though my husband was away, we had a lot of visitors who, a lot of family and friends who went to Hawaii for vacation. So I always met up with them and took them to like all the fun places, and we always did so many like fun things. So I felt like my time in Hawaii was just like, it was amazing. It was such an amazing life experience, and like all of my friends that I met in Hawaii, coworkers, like everyone was just so sweet. That the type of aloha lifestyle that the people of Hawaii live by is it's like a real thing, and everyone again is just so sweet. I feel like everyone I've met there and befriended has really like touched my life in some type of way. So again, it was an amazing experience. It was very short-lived, unfortunately, because we did again only live there for a year and a half. But so I will say though, within our time being in Hawaii in 2015, officially around July of 2015, that is when my doctors basically stated that I hit remission with my lupus nephritis. So basically the protein in my urine was really low. It wasn't completely gone, but it was low enough for me to be considered in remission. Like by textbook definition, I was in remission. So again, that happened in July of 2015, which was amazing. It gave me such a boost of confidence, and it made me so happy. It made me happy, it made my husband happy. Everyone in my life, my family, my friends, were so happy for me. I just felt like I conquered the hardest part of my life during that time. And since being in remission, I kind of decided to be a little selfish, and I kind of started to post a little less about like lupus awareness, and just really wanted to go about and just enjoy my life, just start living like a normal person again. So again, I worked a lot. I was always on some type of Hawaiian adventure, and I started to work out again. I started women's kickboxing in Hawaii, so I was really trying to build up my strength again. And then when my husband finally came back, at the end of 2015, he announced that we had to move again, and then we ended up being relocated to San Diego. So even, being in remission in 2015, and mentioning that I wanted to be selfish and just be a little less about lupus and focus a little bit more on like being normal. Unfortunately, my first cousin, who is also my god sister, ended up developing lupus in 2014, around the time I was leaving for Hawaii. And she ended up experiencing like finger swelling, and she actually also ended up in the hospital for a clogged artery in her lung. She was in the hospital for like a good week or so, and I just remember like being in Hawaii, like not sure whether or not I should like come home to see her. And it was just really difficult because, you know, when I was first diagnosed with lupus, I was the only person in my family known to have lupus, and then all of a sudden my first cousin ends up with lupus. And I just remember it was just so heartbreaking because, like, you know, I just felt like I was starting to do well with my health, and then all of a sudden this, you know, this person who I love and who I'm super close with and who is my family ends up developing, you know, lupus too. And it just made me really sad. And another thing that, you know, made us both really sad during that time was my grandmother, who basically raised us, ended up developing dementia, or Alzheimer's, in like 2013, and then it progressively got worse throughout the years. And, you know, my grandma is literally the strength in the family, who, you know, would always pray for us. Like, you know, my grandma is traditional, you know, Filipino, so she used to pray at her altar every night. And I just remember the day that I saw her not praying at night is when I knew that things were going to be different from now on. And it was just so hard for me to like feel happy for myself, knowing that these two important people in my life were going through what they were going through. So continuing on with my story, again, my husband and I ended up moving back to San Diego in the beginning of 2016. So my husband got relocated, and then he ended up going on shore duty. So we ended up in San Diego. And going to San Diego, or even before knowing we were gonna go move to San Diego, I just remember kind of contemplating like, oh my god, like I kind of need to figure out like my career, I guess you could say. And I'll actually talk more about like my career choice a little bit more in my other lupus videos that I plan on making. Again, I mentioned that I was planning on making a separate video for how I deal with lupus in work and how I dealt with lupus in college. But basically, when we moved to San Diego, I decided to go back to school. And so I worked less, because remember I worked 3 jobs in Hawaii. So going to San Diego, I worked less, and I decided to go back to school part-time. And, you know, being back in school, or school in general, is just really stressful. You know, because I'm such a perfectionist, so of course I wanted to do really well, but I also, you know, wanted to work so that I still felt, you know, my sense of independence. Because as much as possible, like even though I'm married, even though my husband supports me in like everything that I do and whatnot, like I always want to kind of work for myself so that I didn't have to feel like, you know, that type of wife who has to ask for permission to buy something or whatnot. Like I really wanted that sense of independence and financial freedom myself. So yeah, so school and work. And then I noticed around May of 2016, I started experiencing a lot of body pain. It wasn't like the type of joint pain I was normally experiencing. And it literally was to the point where like my entire body felt really beat up and bruised, and it even would affect my ability to walk. And so that was happening here and there. And then so I brought it up to my rheumatologist, and a few months later, around September or like October of 2016, that is when I was officially diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So my whole experience with fibromyalgia is another thing I wanted to keep separate in a different video. It is something that I'm struggling with now, but I'm, again, strictly going to keep this at my lupus nephritis story. So coinciding with my diagnosis with fibromyalgia, you know, protein started to show up in my urine again. So I was basically experiencing kind of like another relapse, but it wasn't like my other two relapses where it was like very extreme and like noticeable and of a really big concern. It was kind of like at a really low, just really low, basically, like low enough for me to like still be okay, but for it to just still be present was still of a concern. And so for an entire year, my protein in my urine has kind of been at this plateau where it wasn't going away, but it wasn't like increasing to the point where it was of a really big concern. And my nephrologist has tried to like increase or put me back on prednisone, has tried to increase my CellCept dose. We even tried to add another drug called tacrolimus, or also known as Prograf, in addition to my CellCept, my high CellCept doses, just to see if that would help with the protein in my urine, but so far it hasn't. And what was very difficult was that my rheumatologist and my nephrologist were kind of like not in agreement with my treatment. Like my rheumatologist wanted me to do a third kidney biopsy, but then my nephrologist kind of felt like, you know, your test results have been pretty consistent for basically an entire year. This might just be your like norm. But my rheumatologist, of course, is like, no, that's like not an acceptable answer. Like this is not a norm to still have protein in your urine, because you're basically not even supposed to have protein in your urine at all. So my rheumatologist and my nephrologist has been going back and forth with each other for basically an entire year. Then all of a sudden, you know, because it being military, I end up getting a new rheumatologist, you know, because doctors kind of come and go within the military for various reasons. But then this new rheumatologist was kind of like on the same page as my previous rheumatologist, who was like, hey, you need to do this third kidney biopsy. But again, my current nephrologist wasn't down for it. Like she kind of didn't see any real reason to do it. So my rheumatologist wanted me to get a second opinion and wanted to refer me out to a different nephrologist at UCSD Medical Center. And so I was in the process of doing that, but you know, to get referred out to another hospital takes some time, and there's a lot of things to work with within insurance. You need to get a referral and then set the appointment, and of course setting an appointment with a new doctor takes a couple of months. So it took me a very long time to get an appointment at UCSD. I think it took me about 4 months, and then when I finally got the appointment, it was just a waiting game. So as I was waiting to get seen by a new nephrologist at UCSD, my current nephrologist kind of gave in and decided that, hey, maybe you should just go through with a third kidney biopsy, just so it can kind of, you know, finally put me at ease as to like what my kidney was going through, because for an entire year my body basically wasn't responding to my current treatment. So my nephrologist was like, okay, let's just do the kidney biopsy. There's no harm in doing a third one. At least we'll get a better understanding of your current situation with your kidneys, and we'll have a better understanding of what new treatment to put you on. So my nephrologist ended up scheduling me for my third kidney biopsy, which is scheduled for the end of this month, and I will be vlogging my entire experience. It's going to be my very first vlog, so I hope it works out. So yeah, so I'm getting my third kidney biopsy. I'm really not excited for it, but I just want to move forward and get the right treatment so that my kidneys can be back in remission, because this has been such a struggle for an entire year. It has been very, very depressing, and on top of that I have fibromyalgia too, so you know, adding all of this extra pain has also been very depressing. So I really hope that things work out. But so yeah, so my nephrologist ended up agreeing to scheduling the third kidney biopsy like a week before I met my new nephrologist at UCSD, and when I finally met with her, she kind of was in agreement, like, hey, you just need to do this third kidney biopsy. So now all of my doctors are in agreement, and now I'm just waiting to finally do the kidney biopsy and see the results. So I'm really nervous. Honestly, I'm more nervous for the actual results than the procedure itself, because again, this is my third one. So I know it's not gonna hurt. I know I'll be fine. Again, it's a quick procedure. So yeah, that is where I'm currently at. Thank you so much for watching my lupus nephritis part 2 video. And thank you so much for watching my other videos and just taking the time to listen to my lupus story. I know my lupus story is very long and detailed, and I keep mentioning that I'm going to post all these different videos and different subjects. I just find that it's easier that way, and easier for you all to kind of follow my storyline and my timeline so much better. And my third kidney biopsy is scheduled in 2 weeks. So again, I will be vlogging that. Please follow me on Instagram and Snapchat so that you can kind of see little clips the day of. I'll be posting things the day before, the day of, maybe something a little after. I'm not too sure if I'm going to add those clips into my vlogging of the actual kidney biopsy. So I will post everything below. And then I'm hoping after that I'll be able to post my diagnosis with fibromyalgia, because it's something that I am completely struggling with now, and it's something still quite new to me. So again, thank you so much for all of the support. Again, family, friends, husband Kevin, especially for the support throughout the years. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned. Thank you. So this is my husband Kevin. And I just bought this today at Target, the mystery Oreo. So we're gonna see what flavor, stop! We're gonna see what flavor this actually is. It's limited edition, and it's a mystery flavor, again, by Oreo. Oh, smell it.
It smells like Fruit Loops, or Fruity Pebbles.
Is it? It does.
Yeah, it tastes like Fruity Pebbles.
Oh, it's Fruity Pebbles. Oh, I think we kind of ruined what the flavor is for them. Would you eat it again though?
No.
Oh, it's alright.
It's Oreo. It's supposed to be like chocolatey.
My favorite one was
like
the chocolate chip one. That's alright. Let's give it out.